I'm Dan.
And I'm Alex.
And I'm Nicky.
And we are pleased to be with you here on a Wednesday. Hi to you all, wherever you're listening on either platform. As you may have heard, Dan and I are pleased to be joined by a guest co-host on today's episode. We're joined by Nicky Kelvin. Welcome, Nicky. He is a music lawyer turned full-time aviation obsessive. Many of you will know him via the Point Sky channels everywhere around the world, including the UK. But also Nicky now spends much of his days flying around the world. He's big on YouTube, reviewing, decoding the world of points, miles, premium cabins, very much speaks our language, and he has been everywhere, often arguing with his teammates as to who is going to fly up front on those famous videos that he does now, where there's a few of them and they fly in multiple cabins on the same flights, much to the delight of the viewers. Nicky, welcome to On Air.
Welcome.
Yay, hello. It's so good to be here. I'm very excited to talk about planes for the morning.
Thank you for
That's
coming.
What we do.
I'm so excited. You're our first co-host on this podcast.
Well, I'm very honoured. I think we're going to have some fun. I know we share a lot of opinions, but maybe we're going to have a few cheeky arguments about certain airlines and experiences too, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah, it's always better when you disagree.
When we get together as well, the last time the three of us were together was actually in South Korea earlier this year, which I know you have just literally landed from, and joining us fresh off of a direct flight from Seoul. But I always notice that when we do end up meeting up at these different aviation events, the conversation is so different when you just meet anyone else, because anyone else is, and how's the family and where have you been? And we're straight away, we're like, Nicky, did you see what Air France did with La Première? Like, it's straight in to get to see if we're aligned or if we're on the other side of the scale, we've got a different take.
But I love that, and having a different take is always the best. But no, it's also nice to take things off the internet. It's great when we've managed to come to the same place in the world and really dive deep, because I'm very interested in your opinions. And this is a topic that I am very passionate about, as I know both of you are. So there's always lots to be said.
Yeah, 100%. So when we saw you, we were at the Korean Air new livery reveal, and it's obviously been 7 months now. How are we all feeling about Korean Air's new livery now that it's been able to marinate a little bit?
Well, let me tell you, yesterday in the morning, I was not flying on Korean Air. I was actually flying on Asiana, which I think I want to talk about later, because it was an interesting experience, so we'll hold that. But as I took off, I love being in a hub airport of anywhere, because there's something very satisfying about seeing all the planes lined up, and it doesn't matter what airline it is. I think if you see like 20 Delta aircraft or 20 Etihad aircraft, whatever it is, like all next to each other, something like very satisfying to the eye. But as I took off from Incheon yesterday, seeing all of the Korean aircraft lined up, and they were interspersed, I'd say, of like sort of 15 in a row, maybe 3 were in the new livery, and it's just not hitting for me. And I think it's because I really loved the old livery, and the event we went to and saw was it was a pretty glitzy event. I mean, they were literally shoveling caviar in people's mouths. And the livery, whilst it was like shiny and cute, I think the event wowed us. Is the livery itself really, as I've settled into it, I think I'm not that into it, to be honest.
That's interesting.
What about you, Alex?
I think that, I don't think it's, I think I associate it with the event as well. So I think when I see it, I react positively to it immediately, because I'm nostalgic about what a great event that was. There was a bathtub of caviar, as Nicky said. Like we were, it was extra, but it was good. But if we were just judging it on paper, as we do with most of the liveries, where it's just a press release, they did lose some soul, ironically, in that design process, and unfortunately, I think that's more often than not the case now in aviation. I think you're all right with it though, aren't you, Dan?
Yeah, I guess I'm the one who likes it most on this little panel today, just because I have to appreciate any airline that incorporates color in their livery in 2025, because we're used to boring white drab liveries, maybe besides Riyadh Air's new livery as well, or their livery period. So I appreciate that about it, I will say.
To be clear, like I think a lot of it for me comes from loving the old one so much. It was one of my
Yeah.
favorites.
For me, it follows a similar model to Lufthansa, when Lufthansa kind of removed the yellow, and then everyone was told to, convince themselves that actually this is the new modern era, when we were like, didn't you just kind of strip down the only bit of colour that worked for you, and now you're stuck with low cloud and dark navy blue in Frankfurt.
Yeah, but what's so confusing about Lufthansa is you go to Frankfurt and they still have all these yellow Lufthansa flags outside the terminal. All the signs are yellow. I'm like, guys, what is this half-hearted rebranding?
Nicky, do you remember that they were literally installing the new sign of the headquarters while we were inside the event? Did you catch that when we walked out?
No, I don't think I did actually, but that would have been quite cool to see.
It was, they were
like dragging the old signs off and putting the new ones up.
No, exactly. We were walking out, and Dan and I were thinking, okay, for the long drive back, and where's the car and whatever. And we, as these sliding doors to HQ of Korean Air open, and we step outside, we said, oh, what a time for construction, really, now, because we had to avoid these ladders that were above the entrance. And then when we looked up, it wasn't any construction. They had taken down the old logo of Korean Air and had already put up the new one. Only in Asia could that happen.
Yes.
Well, let me say, I didn't see that, but that's quite cool. But also, if you can hear slight banging in the background, that's some work going on in my house. But I was actually just trying to bring this energy of the Korean rebrand as we talk about this. I don't know if you can hear that the gentle.
We can't.
Doof, doof.
Are they putting up the Korean Air logo outside your house? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know if you went home in a car. I went home in a van because I took the old sign with me. A bit of nostalgia. I told you I liked it a lot. I liked it that much. I took it home with me.
Before we go to into other areas, I quickly want to know something that I don't think we've discussed this for all the times we've met up and the long conversations we've had. The bit I know about you is that I know that Nicky pre-aviation was a music lawyer, but I don't think you still are. Is that right?
Well, but to look to the letter of the law, I am a solicitor still. Okay. I'm allowed to call myself a non-practicing solicitor, but all I've got to do if I want to be practicing is like pay the 200 quid solicitors regulation authority fee, and that's it, and I'm back in, which is actually pretty outrageous. So I don't work or get paid as a lawyer, but I am still one.
And aviation law was never something, because I know that you're in aviation now because that's born out of passion. So when I realized that you were also a lawyer, and that's always what I associated with you with, I thought, I wonder why that wasn't a path.
Yeah, I don't know. I always wanted to be a pilot, actually. That was what I wanted to do. But then I got Crohn's disease, and at the time you couldn't get the Class 1 medical license, so that kind of went out the window. Thought I'd keep the parents happy by being a lawyer, and I got this opportunity. I trained in a big American law firm in the city in London, and in the UK you jump around different practices to qualify. And then I went to work at a record label, and that was where I was there for 5 years, and it was very cool. So it never kind of crossed my path doing aviation law. The firm I worked at didn't really do anything aviation related, so it was never really on the cards for me. And I don't know how interesting aviation law would have been to me, really.
Yeah. Your sister was BA crew, right?
She was. Yeah. And people like to think that gave me my love or passion for aviation, which it didn't actually. She was scared of flying and didn't like planes, and worked on the ground at Leeds Bradford and got coerced into becoming crew, and then came to love it. Whereas I was like, from the early days of my life, was always obsessed.
We can resonate with that. I mean, we share the same thing there. Dan, you and I were discussing before Nicky joined us about how we said we all have also the UK in common, at least through childhood. I think it's like, Nicky, you're a Brit from the north, that I am born and raised just outside London. Dan spent much of his early life in London and also in Sussex or Surrey. Which one?
East Sussex, but I'm born in London, so
Born in London as well.
Do you
Yeah.
know,
So
I don't think I knew this about you, Dan.
I
This is
mean,
new information to me.
yeah, I don't walk around with a British flag, but I have that connection to the UK. Yeah.
Yeah, don't do that these days.
Oh,
No.
true.
how many years in England, Dan? And what were you 10 or 11 when you left?
I was 9, so 9
9,
years
okay.
in England,
That's
but
close.
fully, I mean, from birth until 9 years old. So
That's fascinating. And not that anything surprises me. Like you two chaps are very, very international, and you know, in our world, you meet a lot of people who. I'm actually the boring one here. I just
No,
I
you're
just
not.
grew up in Yorkshire. That were it.
I mean, you've had such a fascinating journey from Yorkshire to the world, right?
yeah. From Leeds to the globe. That's actually that sounds like a tagline for Leeds Bradford Airport, actually.
Or for Jet 2.
Yeah. And let us not forget, actually, Jet 2 is from Leeds, which
way.
which there's something very like nice about that. I also like. Do you know what Jet 2's call sign? Little pop quiz for you both. What is not the call sign? I don't the code. They're like airline
It's
code.
Lima Yankee, isn't it?
Lima Sierra,
Lima Sierra. Who am I thinking of? Lima Yankee.
which is wait, Lima Yankee. That's El Al.
Right.
Okay.
But Lima Sierra LS is Jet 2, which is Leeds' postcode. I grew up in LS 17.
Oh,
So,
boy.
There we
So
go.
it's literally
A
Air
little bit of
Leeds.
Leeds trivia on the podcast. Who would have thought?
I love that.
What's the like the moment? What's the time that you then? What's the defining moment? Because Dan and I have spoken about this before, but what's the defining moment where you think, okay, that's where you know that your obsession with aviation is alive? And then later, how does that then become part of the career plan?
So what do you want to take? Am I taking you back to the first memories of me being obsessed?
Basically,
I mean, I always remember one of my earliest, most like geeky moments was as a young kid. We used to go to Israel on holiday a lot, and we mentioned LY as a call sign. So El Al used to fly, and sporadically over the years have flown to Manchester from Tel Aviv, and that was the way that we used to go on holiday to Israel. And they used to fly. They had 757s and 767s that they flew to Manchester.
Oh, the 757s.
And in those days, you never really knew, there was no flight radar. No, as like a 6-7-year-old, I didn't know what aircraft was going to turn up. And we used to be driving to Manchester Airport, and me saying to my parents, I'd be like, if it's a 757, I'm not going to Israel. It has to be the 767. And they'd be like, literally, like, what are you talking about? And then we'd go through security, and I'd run to the gate and run to the window and look at the aircraft and see what it was. And there was something so exciting to me about being on a wide body, and also like I've always been into like the branding element of airlines, and the inside of the 767s were painted in blue with blue seats, and the 757s were like this brown dirty color, and they had like kind of these brown ugly mountains painted on the sides of the walls, and I really didn't like it. I really favored the 767, and I just remember so vividly how much of a big deal this was to me at the time. And it was something that even the adults around me literally didn't even know what I was talking about.
So it just came out of nowhere by flying, basically.
Yeah, I think so. I just always had that fascination. I used to get my parents to take me to Leeds Bradford Airport to watch the planes.
See, it's the same story.
Taking off and landing. Yeah, and I just don't know. I don't where exactly that came from. Like, I don't know. I can just identify the manifestations of that obsession, but it was always there from the very beginning.
That's really
that
interesting.
just a quick nerdy question, was that a 767-200? Or sometimes that, or a 300?
Oh, I think it definitely was whatever it was an ER. I think, or like what did they suffix it with the ER or LR? There was definitely like,
yeah,
because I remember it saying long range or extended range or something. I should know this better.
Because I see they had the 767-200 ER and the 300 ER. But the 200 is just such a, now obviously non-existent plane, but it's one of the coolest planes you can imagine. Like a wide body with a A321 form factor, basically.
I think it was probably that. I reckon it was that 200 ER. I mean, we're talking like this. Well, this is early 90s, so that I think that probably tracks.
We were saying that it's interesting when you have this like big passion in aviation, which the three of us share. The assumption from everyone else is that it's linked with family. And so you touched on it at the start. That's probably why people make the link. It's in several of your intros online about the fact that your sister was crew, ended up being crew in BA. But actually you say that your fascination and passion was there way before that, just as long as you can remember. And in that sense, we're the same. The interesting part is how you also can't put your finger on it, because neither can we. When we're asked, I can't say that, oh, it was after I was 7, or it's as long as I can remember. And Dan says that he's the same. But the only, let's say, awakening moment in all of that for me was when I read Richard Branson's book, which was a short read. I think it was only 100 pages. It was called Screw It, Let's Do It. And it was a brief notes of how he started to set up the Virgin Group and Virgin Atlantic. And he wrote early on in the book how aviation, unlike anything else he had dabbled with or thought about, just got into his blood like nothing else did, and he felt it everywhere. And from that moment on, it was like the famous Leonardo da Vinci quote about walking the earth with your eyes turned skywards. And he said it was just absolutely in him, despite there not being a clear link between, hereditary or ancestors and so on. And I remember being 7 and reading that line and thinking, yes, that's how I feel about aviation. That's the same exact thing. There was no link. The school later confiscated that book because they said it was an adult read, so they would rather than me reading some other bullshit. But that's the that was like the moment.
That really resonates with me as well. And I think, the three of us seem to be coming from a common place with this, but you see that a lot. And in my world, like, I've had exposure to lots of different worlds through the different careers that I've done through music, law, and then obviously in the aviation world is different. I expect to turn up to an event like the Korean livery reveal and people be into aviation. But in music, for example, where it's not that world at all, you would find your people would come out of the woodwork, and you'd find yourself having these in-depth conversations about aircraft and airlines and people who have been obsessives forever and ever and ever. Same in like the gay world, in the gay community. I think in the gay world you find, and I'm sure there's something in this, there's an over-indexing of people who have an obsession with aviation. But the people in that world who've really come to me and are seeking out like that moment to have a discussion. They're in the club, but they're in, I don't know, it's 3 a.m. in the club, but they want to talk about whatever meal service on some airline that they were really impressed with. I find it like really, really hilarious, and I love it. I love connecting over that.
Yeah, and there's this general obsession with Flight Radar 24. Specific, like Avgeekery is one thing, but there's like a community of the people who you would always least expect who are obsessed with Flight Radar 24, which always fascinates me.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because that sits outside. You're right, it sits outside of the Avgeeks. I've got people who are Flight Radar 24 obsessives who really are not into aviation, actually. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so funny. But we want to move into our first little debate or discussion of the day, which is surrounding Skytrax. Skytrax is obviously the most recognized airline rating system out there, airport ratings, all that kind of stuff. So in general, with airline ratings, or specifically with Skytrax, do you, Nicky, feel that those ratings are generally trustworthy, accurate, or do you more align with me and Alex?
So I guess the common trope is that Skytrax are just bought awards or whatever, that maybe the ones, certain airlines that have these consistently high ratings, maybe they deserve them, maybe they don't. I don't know if I have no factual or evidence base. I've never researched it. I actually don't know. So, and my take on this is that I actually don't know if people really care. So out in the real world, I don't really believe that people are choosing who to fly with or caring who they fly with based on these kind of ratings. I've never heard a normal person, not in aviation, be like, oh, I was really shocked by that meal on that plane or that seat on that plane, because after all, they are a 5-star awarded Skytrax airline or whatever. It's just not. It's not something that's like for normal consumers. I don't think they're really thinking about it in a way that people are like, oh, my mum flew with them and it was terrible and I'll never fly with them. You know, I think those things have much more impact. So Skytrax, in conclusion, I don't know if I have like an evidential take on how accurate they are or not. I certainly disagree in some respects where like an airline's highly rated and I have a bad experience, but my main take is I just don't think your average consumer knows or cares.
That's actually a fascinating take. I think you're right.
Before without actually looking at how Skytrax operates, I guess what I wanted to know on that is if you, as a traveler and a frequent flyer all around the world, and we're crossing paths all the time, if it plays any role into how you perceive airlines to be. Because again, it's different for the outside world and how the public perceive this to us on the inside. Do you give it any thought as to, okay, this is not just credible, but this airline is just received this, so let's give it a go, or it just doesn't play a role?
But for me personally, it doesn't play a role. Over the past years, I think we used to be more intense in the way that we used to do this, but the points guy used to issue awards. It was things like best international first class, best US domestic airline, whatever, lots of different awards like that. And in the run up to it, we would send people out and we would go and fly and experience and re-rate. And actually, when we review flights now, we used to have scored ratings, which we don't actually do anymore. But that also comes with like it's very subjective. It's people that are fans of ours that maybe align with like the way that we view things. But when it comes to like a Skytrax or the awards that they're giving, or similar kind of like people who give stars or ratings or whatever, I think it gives this one big stamp to a whole airline or a whole experience. And I just don't think that like, it's just, the world doesn't work like that. So like, let's take Qatar for it as an example, an airline that is, in my experience, incredibly consistent and across the board. I've had lots of great experiences. I've had some not so good experiences too. But like, for example, my experience of flying from Nairobi to Doha on one of the old 777s with the old business class, like you that is not a 5-star experience, like as a product to see at all, but yet will be the experience of many tens or hundreds of thousands of people in a year who end up on that aircraft, versus what I still believe and many other people say is one of, if not the best business class in the world, if you get like the right Q suite on the right route on the right day. So just giving that like one stamp to an entire airline or an entire cabin of an airline just doesn't really work in the real world.
Yeah,
I love this perspective. I also think that if you ask your average person, like, what rating do you think this airline has? Like, for example, if you ask people what rating do you think Emirates has, I think most people would assume that that's 5-star, but that's not the case. And then the question is, what exactly are we calling 5-star? Because sure, some elements of the onboard experience could be, but then if you look at their app or their customer service or their service recovery, things like that, then it completely flips. You'd be calling the US airlines the world's 5-star airlines compared to, many of the airlines on the 5-star list, where on ground or mobile customer service is almost non-existent. So
yeah, I totally agree with that. People ask me all the time, like, and people must ask you this all the time as well. They'll say things like, oh, I've got to go to Hong Kong or New York or whatever, like what's the best airline, or what's the best whatever. Or they'll say like I'm flying Virgin, are they any good? And I'm like, well, what route, what airport,
it depends.
What time, what aircraft, what cabin, what are you paying? Like all of these things, like they come together for me to give you an answer. If you're flying to the Maldives on Virgin and you've got upper class for £900 return, I'm going to be like, good luck to you, you'll have a great time, it's worth it. But
Yeah.
like, if you're paying 10 grand to go to wherever and you're on some old business class seat, then it's, I don't know, then you're not going to find the value. There's so much subjectivity to
Also,
all
the
of
funny part with Virgin
Exactly.
example is, of course, that if you're flying across the Atlantic on their upper class, let's say in a 787, it's upper class. But if you're flying the same product in Asia on a Thai Airways flight, it's premium economy. So
These
it's
days.
mad how they've rebranded because of the different standards. And we touched on this a couple of episodes ago, that Thai Airways are literally flying Virgin Atlantic's upper class that is still flying today, but they had so much backlash over the sardine coffin like seats that they've taken it down, not just business lower than that, but somewhere between economy and business as a premium economy plus. The concept is the different expectation, the difference in a very unlevel playing field globally.
Yeah, and I think, like, actually, while we're on this topic, one thing which annoys me is people who then take these kind of differences at some kind of face value without thinking about like the market or like what's going. People are like, talk about European business class and what an absolute joke it is, and how like and how that compares to other places. Like, sure, like obviously, like is like some space saver seat on a Lufthansa 320 being sold as business class with a block middle seat a luxury experience compared to like flying. I mean, I flew EVA, whatever you want to call them, recently from Taipei to Hong Kong on their Dreamliner, short haul flight, business class, lie flat, one of the best flights I've ever had, amazing food service, all this stuff. And people are like, and I post about it being like, this was incredible. And people commenting, being like, "You will look at this British Airways, what an absolute joke!" But I was like, you can't, it's not apples for apples. Like, you really can't compare.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away the joy of those experiences. But if they can get away with it, they will. And I'm not going to get upset or stressed. People get upset about this stuff, actually annoyed from afar. I'm like, why are you annoyed about it? I'm annoyed that you're annoyed.
That's also a really good take, because you're so right. Everything is context specific, and you need to consider that. Is there any airline or any airlines that you think are underrated, that deserve to maybe be a 5-star airline, or deserve to be more generally praised than they are?
I mean, talk about giving an opinion based on an absolute sliver of experience. I'm just going to go with that now, but I'll go with it on that context. I've never flown this airline before until yesterday, but I flew from Seoul back to. Oh, and also context: this airline will not really exist for very much longer. But I flew yesterday from Seoul to London on Asiana. Asiana, which is about to be absorbed into Korean Air. It's an airline that and actually from the reactions when we briefly discussed this before, like I think maybe one or both of you view this in a mildly negative light in terms of passenger experience. And everything I had read online before, because I like to do a bit of get myself excited. The reason why I chose to fly them was that I wanted, it's a long old flight. It was yesterday, the flight time was 14 and a half hours from Seoul back to London.
It's a long one.
Sorry, longer. It was 14 hours 50. It was really long. And the ticket in business class was it was like £1,100, which was, I thought,
amazing
for what that was, pretty reasonable. And I thought it's interesting. I love giving a new airline a go, but everything I'd read was relatively negative. And when I say negative, just it's just meh. It was all a bit meh. And I had the best time. The lounge at Incheon I thought was really lovely. The cabin was much nicer than I expected it to be. I actually flew Eva long haul on their 777 on the Hello Kitty plane. Now that is a miserable cabin. I don't know if you've ever done it.
It's old.
Must have been on there. That was miserable. This felt fresher. It was on a 350. It was only I think 5 years old, the aircraft, so it was new-ish. But the service was amazing. The food was some of the best. The first meal I got served was one of the best meals I've ever had in business class.
Wow.
Korean food?
Yeah, it was. They did a sambap. maybe they call
Yeah.
it, where it was like a bowl of like all different types of leaves, cabbage and different one that seemed like a bit like a nettle, and like all like maybe 4 or 5 different types of leaves. There was short rib, like a braised short rib, and all different kind of like a bean paste, rice, like all different bits, and you made up the wraps in the leaves. It was so tasty. The beef was gorgeous, really fresh, beautifully presented. It was really, really, really good. And just like the service was amazing. The crew were really like lovely and kind. There was great snacks. There was a great second meal service, lovely drinks. The silverware and the crockery and everything was like beautiful. It was just brilliant. Like everything about it was really good. And I think also I went into the experience expecting it to be very
That
average.
probably helped then, right?
Totally. Yeah, it always is. If you go with high expectations, like, you know, you're setting yourself up to fail. But but this was one where I was like, yeah, it's definitely one where literally underrated, rated poorly by everything I read, and I had a really good experience.
I did the delivery of the Asiana A350s, and it's funny because when they first took the A350, and I remember boarding it for the first time at Airbus, I thought, wow, we found our first Airbus A350 customer that managed to make the 350 look old, because it was so beige and so cloth everywhere. It was just, it really looked, and it's funny because most airlines don't go for beige because of a million different reasons, and not least because of the way that it can show dirt or spills or whatever. But it was an example of how an airline can make an aircraft that's brand new not look brand new anymore. But nice to hear that all these years later, you said it was about 5 or 6 years old, this airframe, that it still looked fresh, because the same cannot be said for so many of the other 350 operators that are in home markets that do not spend to maintain. I flew from where was I flying? Thai. I was flying from Seoul to Bangkok on Thai Airways A350, which was one of the last A350s that they had taken of the batch. And I did the delivery of the first one. This was one of the last ones. Went into the bathroom, you know, finished, go to wash my hands. There's no tap at all. There's just there's
No
a hole
water?
where a tap should
A
be.
hole.
Yeah. And I like opened the door and said to the crew, hi, there's no tap. She was like, oh, yeah, I know. And she ran over with a bottle of Evian and said, put your hands there. And I put my hands over the sink, and she poured drinking water, a bottle of Evian over my hands. So they knew. And she said, yeah, you know, because they're really expensive. And I even felt bad that she was justifying the cost of a tap. I said to her, you know, this aircraft is only a few years old. She said, yeah, you know, the difficulty, you know, with the finances and so on. She was like shy, as if it's, you know, an embarrassment or a bit of a shame. But, you know, not every new airline operator keeps their aircraft in a decent condition. Even if we go onto flight radar, you see that the plane coming in to get you is only a few years old, and you think, amazing, it's still going to have the new plane smell. That's not always true.
That can we just take a moment to appreciate the vision of Alex having his hands washed for him with Evian, which I feel like if you didn't, without the context of like of knowing there was no tap in the toilet, that's the kind of thing that would make it into the media, being like aviation analyst Alex Macheras seen having his hands personally washed with Evian in the toilets, like demanding to be cleaned or whatever that.
Honestly,
Do all airlines not do that? I'm confused. Is that not for everyone? Did you not have that on your flight yesterday, Nicky?
and none of us would be surprised about that news story. I think the interesting like takeaway from this is that ratings, sometimes if the rating is low, it can help an airline, like in Asiana's case, because you actually went in expecting less, came out impressed. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, something like Air France La Première, which I tried once, but I went in with expectations to have by far the best flight of my life. And of course that didn't materialize because my expectations were so high based on the price and based on the hype. So that's a situation where what everyone is saying sort of can take away from an experience that would have been really impressive otherwise.
Yeah, I definitely feel that when you go into it when you go into it expecting the most, and also why money matters as well. Like I again, like pay for what I paid yesterday, it was a bargain for that flight. Even if I would have paid more, but had I have paid £10,000 for that, would I have felt the same? Not so sure. What is the best flight of your life, Dan? I know this is,
oh my god,
this is not my
best
podcast, but
flight of my life. Okay, I think it's not necessarily the airlines themselves, but it's the experience you have on specific flights. And for me, there's a handful of times where I've surprised my mom with something amazing, or my friends.
Oh, that's nice.
Like I did 2 friends and me and Oscar in a Q-Suite quad from Stockholm to Seoul. It was the most fun flight ever. I surprised my mom with Emirates first earlier this year. Like those flights, they create such nice memories for everyone involved. And especially I think for the Av geek, like I was having more fun than my friends who are flying Q-Suite for the first time, just because I'm on a plane and I'm with my best friends, and yeah, we're having a blast.
Yeah.
What about you?
That was very wholesome. Mine's a much more selfish experience, but I have a real standout flight on Singapore. I was flying Singapore Zurich. I'd been away with my best friend in Bali, and when I on the way home, I'd used miles, and I don't know why I was going to Zurich. Maybe that was where they were. I think at the time they were only flying the new suites to London and Zurich, and I managed to get like mileage availability. Got on board. I was the only passenger in the 6 suites on the Singapore 380. And so I think they have 4 at the time. They have 4 crew assigned to like the first class cabin, and they were all amazing. They were so fun. And they just went completely overboard. Like, and also this was I don't know if maybe I'd just started at the points guy. You know, sometimes you think, do they clock it and they're trying to like put on a bit of a show for you? This was definitely not the case. They didn't. I wasn't reviewing it. I was not even really in that game. And they were like, oh, we've made up 1 double suite for you just for photos. We've made up 1 double suite for you to like go to sleep in, like have the run of the place. And then there was just this like one specific moment that I just had the best time ever. I had this one memory where I went to the toilet. I was gone for like, I don't know, a minute or 2. It was in the middle of the night. And I came back, didn't see any crew, didn't hear anything. And when I came back, they'd remade the bed, put a mat out by the bed, put fresh slippers, refilled my water, like reset the whole thing.
God.
And I was like, where have you even come from? Like, how did you even know I got up? And I was like, that is like service to the next level. And nobody was waiting there for a thank you or anything. It was like they did it and that was it. So yeah, I've had some very cool experiences doing like fun aviation stuff, but that's a real standout as just like a kind of raw passenger experience.
That sounds amazing.
Singapore suites or Singapore first class crew are just like superhuman. They're so amazing, and it sounds like you got even the best of the best. But of course, being alone, it makes it even better.
Well, I don't know. Now I feel bad because you've had after what you said, like it's about human interaction and love and joy, and I'm give me 4 crew and like a selfish experience.
But if you had been on that flight with your best friend or your a relative, it might have been even better, right?
100%. Yeah. Alex, what about you?
Mine's also Singapore actually, but it's the whenever I'm asked this question, that I always give the same 3 examples, and the thing that the 3 have in common is that each of them are not commercial flights per se, and I think that's why they was so unbelievably special. Because in first place is definitely the Singapore A380 new first class, so the same cabin that you were just talking about, the delivery from Toulouse to Singapore. That was unbelievable. That followed 12 years of planning and investment from Singapore Airlines, and then we're in this unbelievably beautiful first class suite, and we were over Iran at the time, and they dimmed all the lights everywhere in the cabin because there was a once in 75 year meteor shower. So we sat on the swivel chair facing the windows and shooting stars everywhere, and it's like, is this real life? Like how could this be a thing? And it was. So that was wow. That's like the goosebumpy example. That's my favorite. And then the other 2, one of them is the Air Mauritius A350, again the delivery, because the Prime Minister wanted us to do a lap of the mountains, and so we were in this like new aircraft at a 90-degree angle, like in turbulence at about 1,000 feet, going really close to the mountains, while everyone below were cheering and taking photos, and that was wild. That was amazing. I had Kurt Hoffman, who's an aviation industry legend, sitting next to me in business, and he kept looking at me, looking out the window, looking at me and saying to me, we're not going to make it, because it was just so close to, it just was so rogue, all of it. Then the third one was very similar, was a Swiss performance flight as part of the St. Moritz Ski Championship, where the C Series at the time, now the A220, was performing with the Patrouille Suisse, the like Swiss version of the Red Arrows, and we were doing like stunts in this empty aircraft, and there was no crew. There was excessive G-force. My phone was floating. I had to sign a waiver that in the event of an accident, I would be able to try and help get the pilots out. It was wild. I couldn't tell my parents about it. I told them after, once I'd survived it. It was crazy. So yeah, those are my top three, all in first place equally.
Oh, I remember your
cool.
photos from that Swiss flight that just looked absolutely crazy. We're just last thing on this topic. What is one airline that both of you think is actually bad, but it's masquerading as a good airline? How about we start with you, Alex?
No, I'm going to hand it to Nicky first while I think.
No, I need to have a think as well.
Okay, I'll
I want to
go.
be like, if I'm going to say
because
it,
Dan is so ready. Dan, you go.
Oh, I don't want to say this. The hate train continues. There's been like several weeks now where I've just been bullying this airline for no reason, because I love the country. I think the airline is good in some ways, but I do think that Swiss, and I'm sorry, Swiss people, I think they get way too much praise, and they're seen as way much more premium for long haul specifically than they actually are. Yeah, I just feel that Swiss they need a bit of a revamp. Obviously, they're getting one with their A350s, but for now, they're not what people say they are, in my opinion.
What do you make of that, Nicky?
I think I sort of hear that, and I think that comes from a place of like, it's not that I think they're a good airline, but maybe its perception is even higher than that. And if I was going to choose one, I know it's sort of in the same bracket, but I would sort of say the same about Lufthansa. I think Lufthansa, like, again, not on their day, is like really not great at all. Not to say that you can't have a great experience there, but it's another airline where like the product you end up getting, the aircraft you're on, really matters. But I could totally imagine you having like a Swiss or a Lufthansa flight which is like incredibly disappointing, but on the same day another passenger having like one that's a delight.
Yeah.
Mine's
true.
also in the same in the same category. It's the same school of thought. Mine is Iberia. I just think that I don't think Iberia pushed themselves to be globally known as this great airline, but I think there is way more chance of you having a more negative experience on Iberia than a positive one, and I just think that it's not really spoken about much. They're in the category of airlines that seem to just get away with it, because anytime I have flown Iberia, be it on a long haul aircraft or short haul, I think the probability of having a crew or staff interactions where the staff are rude or abrupt or gossiping in the galley and don't really want to be working, the food is mediocre, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's more often than it's not, the cabin is nothing even remotely revolutionary, it's very catalogue, the IFE's kind of behind everyone else, just very, very mediocre-y, leaning towards negative, and that's why I just think that.
Tell us how you really feel, Alex. Wow.
They don't. No one speaks about it.
The only part of this I would disagree with is that I don't necessarily know if Iberia is masquerading as good. I just think that in general, people, I don't hear people going, "Oh wow, Iberia is." Yeah, there's a lot of mixed feelings there for sure.
Yeah, I was. That's what I was going to say as well. I think you would hear. I think like your average person on the street has quite a high perception of a Swiss.
Yeah,
and not the same of an Iberia. I've had some Iberia shockers. It is the crew. I actually had the last time I flew with Iberia we flew to the US on the 321, the new one.
Oh, wow.
And that was actually really nice, and the crew were great. I really enjoyed that actually, but I have one of my worst it's one of my worst travel experiences. I went to Senegal. This is probably like 5 years ago. We did this really cool thing. I've got a friend who's an anti-female genital mutilation campaigner. She's called Nimco Ali. Don't know if you ever come across her. She's absolutely amazing. And we went to this anti-FGM convention, and we used our points to like fly some activists across Africa. It was really cool.
I remember seeing this. I definitely remember seeing this.
Yeah, it was a really incredible experience. But not flying home, which was from Dakar through Madrid on a 321, but like a short haul configured 321 where they have those space saver seats, whatever they're actually called. And I was sat down the back somewhere. And the flight was like, it was one of those where it was like, like a 2 a.m. departure or something that got into Madrid. It was maybe, I think it's like a five-hour flight, and got into Madrid at like 6-7 in the morning,
like
something like that.
Red eye,
It was awful. Everything about it, like all the crew on there were all miserable, tired, didn't want to be there. The product was terrible. And then actually, like, we had a layover in Madrid for like, I think 3 or 4 hours, and went to the Velasquez lounge or whatever. And actually, I really like that lounge, to be fair. In is it 4S?
T4S,
I agree.
The non-Schengen thing. I actually think it's a really nice lounge, that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if round the back there's like this kind of restauranty bit that's never used.
Yeah.
It's not really. I've never seen it open. And I went in there. It was still dark, and I went and laid down on like a banquette I managed to fall asleep, and I just woke up being tapped with a broom, like not a broom, a mop. A woman with a mop. She was like shouting at me in Spanish, being like, wake up, get up. And I'm like, can't you just leave me to sleep? Like, nobody's here. I'd literally woken up with a stick and being hit by a stick.
Gosh.
And then I'd like got up, and anyway, then flew back to London, which was fun.
That's
But that whole
horrible.
experience was like pretty dreadful.
That lounge in that exact corridor leading to that restaurant they don't use, the one where you tried to take a nap, in 2021, I was sat round that corner because it was still very much kind of COVID times, and the rest of the lounge was really busy, but that bit that you just described was empty. So I was sat there, and there was a woman, she was a staff member, she was with a trolley collecting like empties, but like wasn't, just loads of empties. Everyone just wasn't doing it. And as she's moving up and down, she was so unwell, and she was coughing and coughing and coughing, and she shouldn't have been at work, right? The poor woman was absolutely sick. Okay, but the bit that the bit that has just stayed in my mind about this bloody lounge is that every time she had these coughing fits and was coughing everywhere and not covering, and I glanced, she kept clocking that I was glancing, and then was telling her colleague, like, watch what happens when I cough. Watch how he's getting angry. So then she just kept coming near like a magnet. Like she's hovering behind me, coughing and coughing and coughing. And I was like, only Iberia. Honestly, only they would enjoy this hit. Obviously, it was a one-off. It was an employee who was having a bad day. But that was in that exact corridor for the same reasons, just trying to escape everyone else.
Oh, that's bad. That's really bad.
It's rough.
Like the sound of that at all.
When obviously when we see each other abroad and we're in different markets and countries and we're in different cities, the benefit of something that we all share in common, the benefit of what we all get to do is that flying connects you from A to B. So ultimately we see a lot of the world, and we end up in some great places and some not so great places. I think that when you travel as much as we do, I would say that we have a pretty good take or understanding on where's hot and where's not, and that's why we wanted your take on this. Where do you think that especially this year, there are so many destinations people are talking about, or they're mentioning for the first time that we maybe had traveled years ago? Where is overhyped, basically, is what I'm building up to, in your opinion, Nicky? And then also on the other side, where is or is it very much underrated?
Okay, so okay, I've got two overhyped, and they're sort of similar, and I have the underhyped. The overhyped, and I don't know. I mean, to some people, it's almost gross, and you would never go. But I just don't get Bali. Like, I don't get it. Like, and I'm talking from like a European perspective here, where I think if you're in Asia or well, not even if you're in Asia, if you're an Aussie, let's say, like, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, Bali is your Mallorca or Ibiza or whatever.
True.
It's such a schlep from Europe. It's not that easy to get to, and it's far. Like, are there elements of it that are great? Was it great in the past? Like, sure, but to me, it's like it's a long way to go for what you get there when there are such incredible places in Asia. Like, Bali for me is just not it. And the same thing goes for, well, and this is on limited experience. I went to Fiji a couple of weeks ago, and it was like shockingly mediocre. Caveat, I was staying in like a pretty enough hotel. I didn't leave Nadi, so I'm sure there are gorgeous islands, amazing places you can go to. But I was still in Fiji, and you could have booked a holiday and gone there, imagining this like incredible exotic. Everyone, when I came back, was like, "Oh my god, how was Fiji?" I was like, honestly, it was like being in Benidorm. And this is like, and not that I have a problem. I actually I'm a bit obsessed with the idea of Benidorm, but if I travel 24 hours across the world and then walked into where I was staying, and this was what I was met with. I came through the lobby, and through the lobby, you might have seen this on my Instagram, was a pool full of Aussies and Kiwis in the swimming pool doing aqua aerobics to Gangnam Style, blasting out over the speakers. And I was just like, no, like, not like you're not coming this far to see that.
I remember the first association I had of Fiji was, as you said, a very kind of European thought of it, where I thought, well, like, Fiji, wow, exotic, middle of nowhere on the other side of the earth, difficult to get to, but once you're there, it's going to look like a Microsoft Windows screensaver and all this. And then I can remember mentioning Fiji to my cousins whilst in Australia, and they were like, ew. And I said, what? And they were like, no, we're not going to Fiji. Like, Fiji does. And again, the other side of the coin, right? Because it's pretty convenient for them, and they kind of know the demographic that go, and have kind of, that demographic has kind of infiltrated and chipped away at the maybe what was once authentic Fiji landscape.
Yeah. So anyway, I must say, like, I'm sure there is incredible parts of Fiji, but like, if you're like, don't try and research carefully, and especially if you're going to travel that far. Am I underrated? And I don't know. I think you will argue with me and say it's not underrated, but I think it's just coming into its own. Is South Korea, which is like really rising at the moment, like with K-pop, Korean skincare, all these things that have really hit the global stage. People are thinking and talking about South Korea, and in particular Seoul, a lot more. And I think we're going to see it pinching tourists that would have previously gone to Japan looking for a similar thing. I don't think it really, in my view, doesn't compete with Japan in terms of like history, and
it's so different,
and scale, and all of that. And but as a destination, I think it's absolutely incredible. Amazing food, amazing shopping, amazing people, super easy place to like be and experience and enjoy. Virgin Atlantic are launching direct flights again from London, starting in the spring. I don't know whether more people will start doing that. BA used to fly, they don't fly anymore. There's plenty of direct connections from the US, and I think that is going to continue to grow as like as a hotspot, and I think deservedly so.
I think we both echo that sentiment, right, Alex?
Definitely for Korea, but I also worry about Korea now, because I worry the impact of TikTok and the way in which now everyone is super aware of it and they want to go, because I don't want it to be spoiled. But then it's such a big place, and even Seoul as a city is so huge that it's, Nicky, didn't you find when we were there, well, you were just there this week, but when we were there earlier in the year, that when you are, around some of the key sites or in the little market area or in Hongdae or wherever, you're still actually not coming across very many tourists at all.
No, not at all. And to be honest, like I think I hear what you say about it being becoming over touristed. I think that is very difficult. It's very unlikely that happens in a big city like Seoul. I think that becomes a big risk for somewhere like Bali, for example, where it's like island life, much smaller places. A big influx of tourists, you completely changes the face of it. Whereas, like, you know, how many millions of tourists come to London or Paris or whatever, and you don't say that tourists don't ruin big cities, but they definitely can ruin smaller resorts or beach places or islands or things like that.
Very true. I think, like, especially in Tokyo, you feel that because you expect to land and just be surrounded by tourists because there's so many people going to Japan. And you definitely feel that in Kyoto or Nara. But in Tokyo, I mean, yes, there's maybe more than Seoul, but it's the same. It's such a big city that it would be almost impossible for tourists to ever feel like they're in the way in most places because there's so many locals as well going about their days everywhere.
Yeah. I think if you think about, like, are you changing the face of what it is day to day, and the smaller the place, the easier it is for that to happen. But these huge cities, I think it's be very difficult.
I want to ask just a small tangent because I was in New York quite a bit during COVID, and it was like the best time I've ever had in New York because there were no tourists. Do you guys feel that way about London? That London was really, I mean, I guess London wasn't as restricted because there was like almost 2 years where European tourists couldn't go to the US. Do you feel that there was a period in London where it was like, oh, it actually is so nice that there aren't tourists here right now?
I mean, I don't like London. And that's quite so. I don't like London, especially London after the pandemic. I feel is just a different place. If I am nostalgic about London, it's like London 2015, 2016, and I feel something started to happen close to COVID, and then COVID definitely ruined it. And so I don't know, Nicky.
Yeah, I feel maybe a bit differently. I do really love London. I've lived here for about 16 years now, and I do love it. I don't get this feeling of like tourists are ruining the place. I think COVID was not so great in that there was less people about, but actually like lots of stuff was closed. Our restrictions on entertainment, restaurants, theatre, all that stuff went on.
It was a mess.
It went on for so long, and it really like as like a resident of the city wanting to go out and have fun here. So I don't think we really benefited. I did have some very magical moments like we all did in those times. Like I remember on New Year's Eve 2020 going for a run through central London, and there was literally nobody on the streets. It was very eerie.
Wow.
And I was running down Regent Street, and I was the only person. It was like apocalyptic.
Yeah.
So like, but other than like those kind of very unique magic sort of 30-minute experiences, I'd say overall like no. However, I did one of my like most standout trips in that period. I went to Rome, and in July 2020, and that was a mind-blowing experience where there was really nobody was about. Like I went to the Colosseum on their like dusk tour thing, which I imagine usually would be overrun with 1 million people, and there was about 10 of us in the whole Colosseum. And so I think that was where the magic was for me. But
what's your favorite European city, speaking of Rome?
Favorite European city. Well, I don't like, in the way that sounds like you don't love London. I don't love Paris personally.
Okay.
I'm very into Amsterdam. I love London.
Yeah, it's funny. London is my favorite
Lisbon.
in Europe.
I'm a fan of like pretty much every. I'm a pretty like likey person. I sort of find value anywhere. That's a really wishy-washy answer. I'm going to say actually, but Lisbon's one.
I love Rome. I love Rome.
Okay.
Lisbon doesn't feel very European. I feel in just not. I I think it's like the geography of Lisbon doesn't feel very European. I don't know. I feel like it has so much to offer because it's a city. It's also by the water. It's also, I don't know, it feels very South American, very Brazilian, very, you know.
Yeah, it could be like Buenos Aires or like, well, I don't know, maybe Buenos Aires feels more Paris-y. But no, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Okay, we need to be very quick. Alex, quick, what's your overhyped and underhyped destination?
No, I think I overhyped. There are so many places, so I'll leave that. But the underrated, I can't have yet more. This happened yesterday. Someone said to me, "Oh, he's already thinking about next summer." Okay, you know, fair enough. You're planning early, blah blah blah. He said he's never been to Greece. I'm like, well, you should definitely go to Greece. He's like, okay, but I looked at flights to Santorini or Mykonos. I'm like, not Santorini or Mykonos.
Yeah,
That's the in the underrated category. I just feel if there is so much that the Greek islands that are lesser known have to offer that I would encourage anyone who is thinking about where to go, let's say March onwards, to think about discovering something that I think they will fall in love with. And Dan, you know that I was a big advocate for your trip that you just took now in summer, and I told you go here, go there, go here. These are places that people haven't heard of, and yet you're going to have an amazing time. Like all these, even the islands that are more known to Greeks but are lesser known to everyone else, like Milos and Naxos and Sifnos and all this. You can just do Antiparos. You can do so much without the horror of everything that comes, unfortunately, in the summer months with, let's say, Santorini, where everyone is queuing to take the same photo of the same blue dome. And it's like, you realize that that's not actual, this is just standard Greek culture that exists on other islands as well, not just on Santorini, which is beautiful. But I would say that May would be the cutoff month. So yeah, underrated. The other Greek islands, go for it.
Yeah. Okay,
Alex, I need you to send me that list. I've got Sifnos is on my bucket list, but I need the list from you.
We need to gatekeep to an extent, but I'll send you a list, and I trust you'll do what's right for us.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, I'll do quick overrated to me is because it's just not my vibe is Berlin. I don't feel very comfortable in Berlin. I don't know about you guys.
I like Berlin.
Bad weather.
Yeah, it's just like a certain vibe that some people love. I don't know. It's not my cup of tea, specifically in Berlin for some reason.
Underrated?
Yeah, underrated. Uzbekistan, amazing country to travel to. One of the best trips Oscar and I have ever done. Highly recommend a trip there. Truly underrated, but it's been up and coming for a while. Huge potential and very nice.
I'm desperate to go there, and Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Crazy. Kazakhstan too. There's so many cool countries that just get forgotten in the middle.
I've been to the closest to anywhere like that I've been is Mongolia. Which I went there for about, I think, 8 days. It was in 2010. It was absolutely incredible. But other than that, like Central Asia, I haven't been anywhere, but I really have it in my head that I want to go. Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. I just have this thing in my head. Like I just have to go there.
Yeah. You're going to love it.
Should. You should. I haven't done the Uzbek but Dan, since your videos in Uzbekistan, I'm thinking, wow, I should not have left Kazakhstan without going to Uzbekistan as well.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to quickly move us into another piece, which is that we received a lot of questions from listeners about this, predominantly to Dan and myself, but I wanted to bring it up in today's episode, knowing that we had Nicky here, because this year, as we now start to reflect on it, as we're in the final weeks of 2025, this year wasn't great for air travel in terms of the incidents that the industry faced, right? And there were some very high profile ones. Of course, there was the American flight that ended up tragically colliding with the helicopter and was downed into the river in DC, just a stone's throw away from the White House, in the middle of the night. We had, of course, the Air India accident, which again was the video footage was everywhere within seconds, and it was a flight that was bound to London, to Gatwick specifically. Again, super high profile accident that was high profile because of the way in which it was just so shocking and not what we expect. When these happen, Dan and I continue to fly, and we get these messages as to if we ever feel nervous, or if any of this ever plays on our minds. And we are pragmatic people. We know that air travel is the safest form of transport and so on. But I wondered if you had ever felt uneasy, or if you, because I mean, you touched on it at the start of the episode, you said that your sister herself was nervous about flying and ended up becoming cabin crew.
Yeah, so I think I never really had these kind of worries around air travel and was never nervous. And then I think in more recent years, I've had this like this intrusive thought at the start of flights where I'm a bit like, oh, might die on this one. Like, I don't know where it's come from, but it's very fleeting and it's not a fear thing. I don't have a physical feeling of fear, but it sort of like comes out of nowhere and then it goes away. I have had a couple of times recently with like turbulence. I don't mind at all. Like it doesn't worry me. But I have had recently some quite bad turbulence on approach, and that actually makes me feel a little more nervous. And it happened. We were on approach into where was I just flying into DC last week, into DCA, and we were on an Embraer, and it was like, you know, when you know that feeling when you're really like flying around the place, and we were at probably 1,500 feet. In the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, like could be a go around. That's exciting, but also I'm like this, and then it starts to enter your mind, being like, wait a minute, like this doesn't feel normal. This feels like way more like crazy than I've experienced before. And then you get in your head a bit, and you're like, is this all okay? And then I heard like some like they're calling on the on the PA, their phones on the intercom thing, as if like one of the crew was calling another crew or whatever. And then you're a bit like, oh shit, when that becomes worrying. And I got actually like, I could feel fear, like a physical fear response. So that was only last week, but that's very, very rare. I could be getting thrown around in the air and I wouldn't be that bothered. Actually, on a recent China Airlines flight, we were flying from Singapore to Taipei. I don't think I've ever had anything as bad as this before. It was a full on, like a mid-air, like a kind of clear, what do they call it? Clear air turbulence.
Yeah.
Clear.
Yeah.
It was like a full like bang, bang, bang drop. Like, that feeling of like you drop 1,000 feet in like a second. And everyone was like, the whole plane screamed at the same time. That's when you know it's like bad. Everyone went like that. But that actually was like, it was quite a short experience, and that I wasn't scared by that, but that was like kind of crazy. But I think that stuff feels like that's happening more and more.
Yeah, we're always trying to figure out, aren't we, if it's genuinely happening, if it's increasing, or if it's just that it's always on social media, so we always feel that we're seeing more of it. Because all of the different like stakeholders in the industry and the ones that are genuinely tracking this for different airlines insist that the data shows that it's not actually happening more. But then there is also data. I had to do a broadcast on the BBC a few weeks ago where this one scientist had said that his study had proven that it is happening further, but it is happening more, but the airlines disagreed with it. It's definitely, I just feel maybe like we always say, the best advice, if anyone had any concern, even if you didn't have a concern, is you remember that the aircraft is not in danger, it's yourself, and you don't want to hit your head. This is quite simple, isn't it? When you can then keep that perspective and you realize that actually having the seatbelt loosely fastened then protects you from that, then you're fine. It's just that I think 99% of people in that scenario are not thinking about how they might hit their head. They're just thinking that the plane is in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that, because I've also read like there seems to be like more scientific reports saying that like with climate change and other changes, like it is more prevalent. And also I guess like keep putting more planes in the sky, more flights, then you've got more chance of more happening. But
yeah,
Dan, we're uneasy about air traffic control, right?
Oh my God, yeah, I was just gonna say, but I wanna, to anyone who's scared of flying, like genuinely skip. We should have put the warning up front, but skip this, because ultimately it's still very, very irrational, and there's no reason to be scared of flying, because it is the safest mode of transport still. It is much safer than your drive to the airport. It's safer than laying in your bed at night. You're more likely to die from falling out of bed than in a plane crash. So just remember these things as we say this. But yeah, I think Alex and I are both very nervous. Or I mean, I actually, unfortunately, increasingly find that every time I'm on approach or taking off from somewhere I know is very busy airspace wise, I'm slightly holding my breath until we reach an altitude where I know that we're at an altitude where we're on our little highway, we're good to go, we're at an altitude where planes won't be, flying in different directions toward us. But there's just some airspaces where there's not a very clear path that planes take when they, are departing or landing, where they just sort of send them around and around in random ways. And that's what I'm a bit nervous, flying at lower altitudes, especially if it's cloudy, so you're flying through clouds and you're like, they can't see anyone else. I mean, I know the aircraft have built-in systems to avoid collisions, but yeah, it's just those parts of flight where I don't trust the people outside the plane to pay attention to us and take care of us.
It's funny because, as you say, your nerves in this area are just linked with the solid reporting, right, on the fact that we have documented issues week after week that are concerning air traffic control and the correct separation of aircraft and all of that. And I think that is, if anyone's going to be concerned about anything, then as an industry, I think the industry is very concerned about that, and I don't see a solution ahead. I would be concerned about that. I'm concerned about whether or not the pilots have had a decent night's sleep. Pilots are human, and they go through divorce, and they have bad days, and they have difficulties and whatever, and mental health and all of that is also an additional worry. So I think there are legitimate reasons as to why someone would feel it. Not that I want to be fueling anyone's fear right now, but I think the reality is most people that feel uneasy when they do fly, none of those actual reasons are playing a factor there. They're just thinking that turbulence equals planes in trouble equals that they're not going to make it or something awful like that, when actually, as you say, it's the safest form of transport, and on the whole, we're all right.
Yeah, and I think like with all of us, in the many hundreds of flights we've probably taken, even between the three of us in the last year and then beyond, like I've never been on a flight where there's even the remotest sniff of danger. Even when you're a bit like, oh shit, this turbulence is a lot. Like I've never been in any kind of like unsafe situation ever. So that, which sort of speaks. That's good. That's good. Speaks quite a lot. I did have my first diversion, a medical diversion this year though, which was like a really crazy experience, and it was actually quite an interesting experience. But the best bit of it all, from an AvGeek perspective, was that we diverted to Gander, which as a person I am aviation and musical theatre obsessive, and of course Gander is where Come From Away is set. So that and obviously and if you don't know the musical, it's about 9/11 when a huge amount of planes had to divert and land, and Gander was one airport where I think about 20 aircraft landed, and this tiny Canadian town in Newfoundland had to absorb all these people coming off the planes on 9/11. Anyway, so landing there was something like super cool about it, and also thankfully the guy it was an old man, had a heart attack, and he was found not breathing, and the heart wasn't beating, and the amazing Virgin crew actually resuscitated him on board, landed in Gander with the guy lying in the bar area of the Dreamliner, the Virgin Dreamliner, with one of the crew members just lying across him, like in a kind of cross shape, like him lying in one direction and her perpendicular over the top of him to try and keep him on the ground when they landed the plane, because they couldn't get him back in a seat. It was a really like crazy experience. That was like, the closest to emergency, although it wasn't nothing to do with equipment or aircraft. It was a human emergency. But watching like the procedures all be put in action in the most safe way, it was like really amazing to watch. That actually put a lot of faith in like the procedures that airlines have in place.
That's nice to hear. Wow, what an experience.
Wow, yeah, that is. We you said Virgin Atlantic. Small segue into a quick thought. Often on the podcast, and usually when we have a bit more time, so we'll try and keep it brief, but we do a segment known as If We Ran, and listeners write in and with different airline suggestions, and basically very off the cuff we describe what we would do to fix insert airline name. So the segment is if we ran ... Given that, as I said, the three of us will have the UK in common, that we were all born there, we also fly BA quite a bit. And I think that, although I don't think you fly BA as much as, for example, you fly Virgin, is that fair?
Me?
Yeah.
I think, no, I think I probably fly BA more because, especially because with short haul, when you add in that, I'm flying a lot more. Yeah. I fly Virgin a fair bit, but yeah, BA way more.
Okay. Well, anyway, you're super familiar with BA as both of us are. What would you do if you were to run the UK flag carrier? What does it get right? What does it get wrong? What are the quick fixes that Nicky would implement, followed by Dan, and then I'll add anything if it hasn't been mentioned.
So just for I'm looking at my flighty passport. So far this year I've done 28 flights on BA.
Wow.
Okay.
Interestingly, last year actually I had 17 and I had 18 on Virgin, so it just beat last year. But I've fly BA a lot. I think they get, again, like when it comes to this subjectivity, you get people who just have they go on one holiday a year and that one thing is a bad flight, and then they tar BA with this like terrible brush, which I think is unfair. I think BA is getting so much right. I think it's been a few years now, but their move to Doe & Co for catering has like massively improved that onboard experience of what you're eating. I really rate like the food on board now. I have consistently good experiences. Their biggest issue is inconsistency. So if I was running BA, it's like we have to be way more consistent with crew, service, and product on, but like the seats, like that's the problem that just has to be fixed. You just don't, if you're a normal passenger and you're not like us and you don't know where to look, you don't know what you're going to find on board, and you may well be disappointed. Both on the short haul products, like even for me, I can't work out if I'm on one of those planes that's got like the back half of the 320 is like the
miserable
the rubbish seats.
Oh yeah, the where it changes after the exit row.
Yeah, or like, you know,
Or
if you're on one
before.
of their if you, I think, it's row, is it 14 and back or something?
It depends. It depends. Usually it's just that if it's a CO, an earlier CO, then like a classic version of the 320, let's say, then you're safe. You don't need to be right near the front of economy. If it's a Neo, then the problems start.
Because with the Neos, because it could be that, but it also could be the newest Neos, I think, have the new seat, which is on the whole aircraft, and they're really nice. Yeah, they're really lovely.
Have you flown that
ones.
yet? Have you had that?
Yeah, I had it last week.
I haven't.
Actually.
I haven't. I keep saying to Dan, I've flown BA so much this year, and even my sister, she was like, "Why have we not been on that plane that they showed at Farnborough?" I was like, "Well, it doesn't really work like that in aviation."
yeah. Actually, that's where I was. I also was at Farnborough that I saw that for the first time, and then I just flew it to Faro. I went to Portugal like 10 days ago, and it was on one of those aircraft. So yeah, driving consistency. Make every short haul aircraft that on BA, and suddenly it's like, oh my god, okay, I know I'm going to have a nicer seat and a nicer experience than I will on EasyJet, but otherwise like you have no idea. Same with like the business class product long haul, which is like this big problem. And then the other thing is just like get those A380s stripped out and refitted right away and have that as your new like flagship product. You know, everybody loves an A380, and at the moment it's like, it's amazing hearing crew say and passengers saying they're actually avoiding flying the A380, not even because of the product, but because they go tech so often that you're probably going to be delayed. You might get stuck where you are because they're not flying.
That fascinates me about the 380. Sorry, Dan. Just on the 380, I am amazed that BA have let themselves get to a position where they just can't make the A380 work, and even the normal flyers and not the frequent flyers are chatting in forums about avoiding it because it goes tech, and they're blaming the A380 and it's the A380, the A380. Meanwhile, as you know, come over to this region where it's all A380 and they've got a 98 to 99% dispatch reliability, meaning it's almost always fine without a 15-minute tech delay. I can't believe BA have got to a place known for very decent sound maintenance, have got to a place where they're just letting the A380 mess up in this way.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to ask quickly, Nicky, what is your opinion about BA first? Do you think that it gets too much hate, that the hate is like justified?
Again, I think let's throw context into it. Like, are you going to compare it against like Singapore or Emirates or whoever, like obviously you're not going to find a like for like experience. And again, what are you actually paying for it? Like, you know, if you're paying for less than what you might pay on business class on some other airlines, inevitably, if you're paying cash, you're probably not. Like, it's probably going to be quite expensive. But I actually think, again, on its day, it's a really great experience. I flew at the beginning of this year. Was it the beginning of this year? Yeah, down to Joburg on BA first. On the A380 actually, and I had an absolutely brilliant experience. Like, I actually really like, for the A380's faults, the first class cabin is actually more spacious on that aircraft than it is on other aircraft BA have. The crew were amazing, the food was exceptional, the seat was great. I find it super comfy. Does it have loads of privacy? No. Some of those new ones have a door, like, fine, but actually that's something I'm not really that bothered about. So, like, judging it for kind of what it is and not against competitors, like, I think it gets a bit of a bad rep.
But what about compared to even Lufthansa, Swiss, and Air France? I mean, Air France is in a different price category completely, but Lufthansa and Swiss versus BA.
Yeah. So then when you compare it against the competition, it's just not achieving what it needs to achieve. And also, like, I'm excited to see, and I'll reserve my judgment to what that product's going to be. The new first is going to be like on the A380. But my concern with that is they haven't gone far enough. You know, they've got the opportunity now to do something kind of really like, really out there. Not even out there, you know, just like really max out. And you've got the space on the A380. You can do whatever you want. And it looks really nice. It looks kind of chic, but I just think it's not
another great business class, like a really good business, you know.
Yeah, it's just not impressive, not sort of stand out enough. Are you a BA first hater, Dan, actually?
Well, the thing is, I just recorded a review of it about a month ago, and I have to say, unfortunately, the video will not be very positive, but I think when you see it, you'll see why. And it gets into what I would try to fix about BA, which is, I really think that their employees, their crew, their ground staff are their best resource. I mean, Brits, I'm going to state my opinion, are the most lovely Europeans, potentially with Irish people. There's so many warm, helpful, funny people. So the staff are their best resource, but I don't think they're training them nearly enough for what they should do. And there's two parts of this. The first is that even BA employees sort of think BA is a joke now. There's a narrative in the UK that BA has had a downfall. I think that the crew reflects that a lot of the time to the passengers. They know that, yeah, it's a bit of a joke, this food, I'm sorry about this food, this or that. While I think there needs to be a really strong effort to make the crew proud of working for BA and give them something to be proud of. And the second part of that is giving them proper service training, especially for people working in premium cabins or working in the premium lounges. I was just, I just learned that Emirates gives 6 weeks of service training alone to someone who's going to work in first class, 4 weeks to work in business. I think in most of Europe, it's a couple days at most of service training to work these cabins. I know it's expensive, but using the great resource that is BA's staff to
and they're very profitable.
Yeah,
they're very, very profitable.
Yeah, exactly. I think that can make a huge difference, because on this flight, I mean, just a little preview for the video that I took, the crew was so lovely, so well intentioned. But for example, I boarded, and no, I mean, this is like first class problems deluxe, first world problems deluxe. But they just say, yeah, your seat will be to your left. So I'm like, okay, fine. Watch your seat. I sat there for 20 minutes as the crew was chatting in the galley, and no one came to offer a drink or towel, anything. For that to happen in first is just crazy, right?
Yeah, and again, this all comes back to like judging a product for what it holds itself out to be, and that is, and I think if you asked this is like, yeah, sure, first world problems, you didn't get a hot towel, but like that feeling of luxury, being looked after, being guided to your seat, being called by your name, all that kind of stuff is what creates this thing which they purport to set. That's what they're selling, and if you don't get it, it's fair to criticize it. And actually, like last year I went down to somewhere on Qatar, and we flew back BA first from Singapore, and that was an experience on the 777 which was not great, and the crew were not great on that flight. They were disinterested. It really like ruined, and they were negative, ruined the whole experience. And I've realized like I'm quite fickle, and crew attitude like makes or breaks a flight completely for me. And by comparison, this flight down to Joburg was amazing because the crew were like attentive, but also just like fun, and like they were, I don't know. So, but
they showed, I think, personality.
Yeah, which BA like allows them to do. But I think you're right. Like ramp up that training for everybody, and they could excel even more.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Alex?
For me, I think it's just all the little bits and pieces that they can do. For God's sake, sort out the onboard Wi-Fi. Standardize it a bit. Don't leave us on 8-hour daytime flights to the US with no Wi-Fi at all, which is a nightmare for business. It's literally called business class. People are supposed to be able to do business and conduct business. That drives me mad. The roulette again with that. Remember, Dan, when I was going to Montreal, and I was saying to you, but how do I know if my 787-8 has the Wi-Fi or not? And of course it didn't, and so there's all that. And then there's that bit about they're very expensive tickets on the whole for people that are buying, right? And so to be offered a meal straight after takeoff, and the moment you say I might not want to have that now, okay, and then you don't get an element of service again. My friend just flew for the first time he flew first to LA, and he just couldn't understand what he described to me as the lack of food on board, because he felt that he said there wasn't. I said, of course there was food. You had a full menu. There were different options, but he felt that it was very much this or that, and then this or that, and nothing else. And it's not that he has super high expectations. He just said that for the price and for what he was paying, and he was paying about 11K, then he expected, something a little more. I said to him, well, that's where you went wrong. You should have gone to Pret, as anyone knows, flying from Terminal 5.
I do think your judgment can be clouded if you're used to flying Qatar, for example, where you can dine on demand. But I'd say like on the whole, like a lot of experiences are like a lot of business classes, you're fed when you're told you're being fed. But I think if you're used to the alternative, that's quite a big difference. On my flight, actually the Asiana flight last night, they served the first meal they served the first meal shortly after takeoff. Fine, I was ready for it, but they served the second meal like 6 hours into the 15-hour flight, and I wasn't actually ready to eat, but that was kind of the only option. And they did have a whole snack menu, and later on I had some ramen, but like if you wanted that meal, then it was then or not at all. And I think that's probably a more common experience with most airlines.
I like airlines that you hand wash with Evian water, so I won't go further into what we could do with BA. BA have if we ran BA, I would have them collaborate with Aquapana just to take it further.
Oh yes, thank you.
Final quick one. We'll do a quick round here. Okay, fly or buy. I'm going to read a list. Okay, if you call fly, it means that it's something that we should be keeping. You're for it. We should be having. Buy, bit self-explanatory. We need to get rid of it. Okay, seat back IFE. So how do you feel about no seat back IFE in flight entertainment, but instead having solid fast Wi-Fi like Starlink? Fly or buy?
Fly, 100%. Don't care about the IFE. If the IFE for me is like, give me sorry, is this meant to be quick fire? Now I'm giving you an explanation.
Well, listen, I'm curious to hear anyway, because we discussed this a few weeks ago as to if it's important or not. So I want to hear what you're.
Because I'm flying so much, I don't even take a risk on the entertainment. I don't know what I'm gonna get. I can't be bothered with like, is it Bluetooth headphones? Is it whether the headphones are good, bad, whatever?
Yeah.
I have my iPad. I have loaded up everything that I want on there, and that entertainment wise, that's everything I want. I love a moving map. I love a tail cam or whatever. But,
a tail cam is
you don't get, that's, you know, a kind of rare for me these days on the airlines that I'm flying.
Yeah.
But give me, I mean, Starlink, I've had my first couple of Starlink flights recently, and most recently on Qatar. Absolute game changer. Give me that all day long. It's just so good. And that plus my iPad, definitely all I need.
You're right.
What about you, Alex? I assume it's Fly for you.
Yeah, Fly, but then I think I told you this, which is I don't necessarily need Starlink during the night.
Yeah.
So I'm less worried about if the departure is at 1 a.m. and I'm landing into Europe at 6 a.m. Starlink is not always an absolute must. That's the kind of flight time where I think maybe I'll find a film I haven't watched to fall asleep to. So then I do want the IFE to be there.
But you know, if you've got Starlink, you could just use Netflix and
True.
That is what I end up doing. I was saying to Dan last week on most of my flights recently, like just going back and forth and to Europe and wherever. The way Starlink has changed behavior, I'm not turning on the screen because why would I? And also this other thing that I've just realized, which is that because you're forced to sit in one position in one place and you're not being pulled left, right and center, you're not meeting up with a friend, you're not popping out, you're not going to a work meeting, you are then with amazing Wi-Fi able to be so productive in finally checking on Amazon, that thing you were searching for, or replying to the email that you know in the back of your head you haven't replied to for 2 weeks, or, you know, sending a bank transfer to an outstanding invoice, whatever. You can catch up with so much because when else in society are we forced to sit still and like, right, don't move now, but yet you have all the resources you need to be productive.
Completely agree. In like when I get locked in, I can have like a 3-hour block, great Wi-Fi. I get more done honestly than I do in like a week at home.
Yeah, I agree. Single aisle jets on 8-hour flights plus, fly or buy?
I'll buy it in business class. Is that fair?
But what if there's a choice? What narrow body or wide body?
I'll take the wide body. There's still something undeniably sexy about it, if nothing else.
Dan?
Buy. I think over 7 hours, it's a bit of a stretch. I mean,
yeah, it's like I love the Airbus A321 XLR team listening to this, like, you know, as if all that work is for nothing.
The worst is for the crew. I just feel like I start feeling guilty for the crew ordering food and stuff when you know that they've spent 8 hours with no rest in that tight galley. Yeah, it's
wait, tough. Let me adjust this question for you, for both of you. Would you take, let's say, like, choose the best business class product that you want on a 350, a Dreamliner, whatever, London, connect in you're going to Cincinnati, let's say, and you can either fly like London and connect in New York and Boston, but you get to fly whatever wide body of your choice, and then connect onto Cincinnati, or you can fly direct on a narrow body.
I would probably connect, to be honest.
Yeah, see, I would connect, but I'm, you know, very worried about connecting in the US with just how long it takes. I would connect by staying in New York for one night and then, then
or
fly
maybe
the
like
next day.
Any situation like that didn't involve the US, the answer would be connect. But specifically with the US, it's like maybe.
Yeah, direct. Well, yeah. See, you asked that question, but we're thinking more about what a nightmare the US is to connect rather than the product or the size of the aircraft.
Nicky,
fine. So if I made that like, I don't know, Mumbai, and you can connect through Doha, or you go direct.
Connect.
Yeah, connect as well.
What about you?
I don't know. Like I've done. I don't know. I'm sure like you both have as well. But on those narrow bodies, I've flown Iberia, ITA, Etihad, Aer Lingus. Like I've had pretty good experiences on all of them.
That's like almost all of them.
Is there any others? I feel like I've done Iberia, Aer Lingus, Etihad. Yeah, and I've had that invariably decent experiences. But there is something still like, you know, all this being said, I would go very out my way to fly something that I want to fly. sometimes I'll take that. When Singapore was flying a 380 between Singapore and Frankfurt, I would take that and connect and go to London, even though, I mean, that's sort of a bit ridiculous, but I sort of fancied a little.
It's not
Singapore
ridiculous
moment.
at all, Nicky. This is a space
Safe
to celebrate
space.
and champion such ideology.
Yeah. Right. So yeah.
And I think like most of the time, airlines are putting worse business class products on narrow bodies, which is a problem. But if you look at Etihad, where their A321LRs actually have one of their best seats, better than their 787s, in my opinion, that's when it gets a bit more difficult to decide.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's a
There is
observation.
definitely like a feeling being on a wide body that you just don't get, like a feeling that I'm seeking that I don't get. But yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. I love asking people that don't fly often this, because a friend came and visited me from she was visiting from London, and she came out on the A380 in business, and then she flew back on the 350-1000 and the business was Q suite, which you don't get on the A380. And I said to her after, which one did you prefer? And I was so sure she was going to say Q suite, and she said the A380. I said to her, why? I'm so interested. Is it because of the lounge, the onboard bar? She said, no. She said, I think it's just because like the A380 is so amazing. It's so big. So, everything that we all consider as passengers. And actually, just because she perceives that the A380 is amazing, how huge it is, that's why she preferred it.
Yeah. And also, if you told a normal person, would you rather connect or fly direct when there's a direct option and if the price was the same, they would think we're all absolutely crazy for suggesting we'd rather connect.
Well, we are.
We are.
Fly or buy a third runway at Heathrow?
Buy. Let's just go for it. Come on. Sorry, fly. Oh, wait, buy. I think I meant B-U-Y.
You meant purchase.
Yeah. Sorry. Fly and buy. B-U-Y.
And buy. Okay. All right. Phone calls mid-flight. Fly or buy?
Buy.
Bye. Ban.
I mean, I always think that I'm like, no, for other people, no phone calls. But for me, it's okay because I know how to be discreet. Like I've got the thing like in my hoodie, like just like wedged in the neck area, and I'm like whispering, and I know no one can hear it. Not the guy who's on FaceTime abusing it.
So Liam, who, if anybody who watches Points Guy YouTube will know very well, and I've worked with for the last 7 years, we landed from Seoul yesterday, and we were talking about there was somebody between us in the cabin snoring really loudly. Now, loud snoring is like kind of universally not enjoyed by people, but literally, if I hear you take so much as a breath, like I'm fuming about it. I like get really angry by like noises surrounding me, which is annoying when you have a job which you end up being like surrounded by different random people all the time. But he had a little dig yesterday because somebody was playing something out loud on their phone, and that annoys me so much. Or if I can hear stuff coming out of people's headphones, even that annoys me. And he's like, I get it, you hate it, but he's like, you are also the worst. The amount of times you sit there blasting out a TikTok, showing it to me like on a train or on a plane or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, fair. I was like, but it's okay when it's me.
Yeah.
but
see,
exactly. Do you have do you know what misophonia is?
Yeah. I do.
Oh my god, me too. The chewing for me is just, I'll go ballistic.
It's, do you know, it happens, the worst for me is like, and you get in a cab, like an Uber or whatever, and like chewing gum or sweets, or like they're smacking their lips. Honestly, this like, I'm a very chill person, and I like internally lose it at these kind of things. It's like,
I mean, it is uncontrollable. I'm sure you've tried to control it, just like I have many times.
I've asked in therapy, I've been like, can you fix this for me? And they're like, no.
No.
These like the newer aircraft and like the 350, for example, it's making it worse because it's so quiet in the cabin that now I remember on the very, very early A350 flights when it had entered service at that point with Qatar, Singapore, I want to say Vietnam was the third operator. And hang on, so Qatar was December. And we went, so I think Vietnam was the third. Anyway, 3 operators. And I remember I said to the Airbus team at the time, any findings? Like, what are the early things, the things that you hadn't expected or blah, blah, blah. And they all said, we now have a noise problem in the cabin because it's so quiet. When somebody sneezes, 15 rows away, you can hear it loud. You can also hear the snoring. You can hear chewing, for example. Whereas on the 777, the whooshing that exists throughout the flight tends to mask it all. Fly or buy, families boarding before anyone else.
I feel indifferent about this. Dan, it sounds like you've got an opinion.
No, it's just because this has been a ongoing talking point this season because Alex is very passionate about this.
I'm not very passionate about it. I just think that when it's like you happen to be traveling at a time when I then quickly like Google my cousin's school and realize, my God, they're off again. And then I realize that's why the cabin is full of 50 kids in front of me who are standing in the aisle not knowing where to go when they could easily just board with everyone else with their group number. Didn't need to be on first, in my opinion.
When we have kids, if we do, we'll understand why people with kids should board first.
Nicky's playing it safe and he doesn't have an opinion in inverted commas on this.
Honestly, I think I've been relatively opinionated throughout this podcast.
Yeah.
And this is just, it's honestly just not one that I actually feel that strongly. I've never been in a situation where I'm like, irritated by a family boarding before me. So
Nicky,
sorry.
What is airport theory and fly or buy? I genuinely don't know what this is.
What is airport theory? That's is that like a TikTok thing? That sounds
just
like
because we think you know the trends better than us.
Yeah, I'm assuming that like because you're on top of this kind of thing.
Airport theory is like
Something
when
to do
you're
with the
cutting
time
it
you arrive.
fine. It's like cutting it. It's like the very, very last possible minute arriving at the airport. So you're like not wasting your time.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think but buy because like what why? Unless you're at somewhere that is like incredibly predictable, like you can push it at London City, but like if you're flying from Heathrow and you've got to get to the sea gates and the queue, first wing closed, like security queues, blah blah blah, like you're out of control of so much of your journey that like and and airlines will happily offload you. They're not gonna, or maybe Alex and Dan, maybe they wait for you, but they certainly don't wait for me.
No, they will not.
With
Alex,
crates of water, bottled water.
What do you think?
Do you use the first wing at Terminal 5?
I do, yeah, often.
Will you, or are you concerned about being affected by the cull of the BA frequent flyer scheme, or have you moved? Have you protected yourself?
I haven't moved. Sorry, I'm just going to track back a minute because improving BA, one thing which I just want to say is just lounges, like the lounge experience, even as a gold card holder, is just like the new lounge in Miami looks really nice if they roll it out and they go big. But we were talking about training, customer service. Like when if you fly Virgin, like out of the clubhouse, you're getting like a personal service. They're coming and chatting to you. They have these people. I don't know what they call them, the role, but it's like lounge supervisors or whatever, whose job it is to like roam, keep people happy, chat to people, solve problems, make people feel welcome, whatever. That doesn't exist. Like BA doesn't have that, and you really like notice that difference. So that's one improvement I've made. I do use the first wing. I thought I stuck with the executive club, or the club as it's now called. I didn't think I was going to make it, but I actually think I am going to do it just now. I'm on 15,000 tier points. I need another 5,000, which I think between now and March, April will be fine. And it's going to be really, but I've just got a bit lucky with like tickets and what I've been flying and what I've been doing. And I'm not sure I'd be able to replicate this next year, but it's going to be really interesting to see next year who's like lost status. For all the people who like really wanted it and wanted to keep it, I imagine they've just gone down different avenues. They will still be One World Emeralds, just through a different route.
True.
When I looked at my options and when I was looking at my year ahead of flying, I didn't have, I know lots of people switched to Finnair, for example, which seemed like a good way to achieve Emerald. And for me, looking at that program, I still wasn't going to make it. So I was just like, I'm just going to like carry on doing what I'm doing and see what happens.
Keep calm and carry on.
I think you're so right, actually, about like there won't be any fewer elites. There will just be people who are less loyal to BA now, which is probably not.
So the lounges are still going to be packed, basically.
Yeah. But Nicky, we have had so much fun. Thank you so much for taking so much time out of your day to join us on air. It's been a real pleasure.
literally only talking about planes with you two could make me stay here for so long and be engaged completely.
We are grateful. You'll have to come back to guest co-host with us, and I'm sure the listeners are going to love this as well.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Dan, I'll leave it to you to wrap.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you so much, guys. And to all the listeners, don't forget to rate the podcast if you haven't already on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. And we will see you all next week as usual on Wednesday on air. Bye-bye.
See you later.